Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. My name is Gautam Verma and I'll be giving you an overview of R and RStudio. All right, there is a lot of chatter, a lot of buzz in the industry about R and RStudio. So today's session is dedicated to getting an overview of what exactly is happening in the statistical world and how R and RStudio are changing the paradigm for advanced analytics. All right. Okay, brilliant. So let me set the context before we dive deeper into the discussion. So R is essentially, it's an open source programming language, and it finds its root to the statistical computing requirement that arose a few decades back. And that is when, the programming language S came into existence. So R finds its roots to this programming language by the name S. S was essentially developed a few decades back, by John Chambers while he was working at Bell Labs, right? So essentially, R finds its roots to the original language by the name S, which came into existence a few decades back. All right. However, in the last decade or so, R was essentially evolved from the University of Auckland by the two gentlemen by the name Ross Ihaka and Robert Gentleman. All right. And a lot of speculations are out there that R was essentially named as a tribute to these two gentlemen who have their names starting with R. All right. So yeah, so basically, about a decade back or so, R was created, and originally the entire code for R has been written in C and Fortran and R as well. All right. The beauty with R is that it's a language that's very close to the high-level languages that we have, for instance, SQLs of the world. And that is one of the major reasons why R has gained so much popularity amongst the data science and analytics world. All right. And there is a joke that goes around with respect to R as well, that R is a programming language of non-programmers. All right. So if you're an R expert, you're basically learned a language that has its roots to the statistics side. All right. And as I was saying, R has been, the open source lingua franca with respect to data science and analytics world. And the very reason why it's so popular is that it's open source and it has a lot of people contributing packages, functions, libraries, etc. to its evolution. All right. So that is one of the major reasons why R is so popular amongst the folks of this community. Okay. Now, on that thought, let me, start talking more about the two IDEs, that is RStudio and RGUI in general. All right. So what you're seeing right now on the screen is the authentic plain vanilla RGUI. Okay. And the method or the way to actually obtain this is by going on this website by the name cran.rproject.org. All right. This is where the comprehensive R archive is present. Essentially, this is a website that's contributed by the open source community. And depending on the operating system that you're running, you can actually go ahead and download the respective CRAN package. All right. So once you actually download it, you can actually install it, and this is what it'll look like once you have it up and running. All right. This is the base R as we have been talking about. All right. Now, as I was talking about, there is a major misconception out there in the industry that R and RGUI are substitutes to each other. All right. That's most certainly not the case. Okay. So R is essentially the base pack that is absolutely essential in case you want to run RStudio, right? And it's not the other way around. All right. Basically, if you want to run R, you don't really need RStudio as a base pack. All right. So RStudio is like an encapsulation. It's like a wrapper on top of the base R, which essentially gives a good look and feel. It improves the user interactive ability of the tool, and it makes the user capable of doing multiple tasks in the same application. All right. And we'll be looking at how RStudio scores over R in just a while from now, right? So let's get this absolutely straight. R is essentially not a substitute, or R and RStudio are not substitutes to each other. They actually work in tandem, all right? And for beginners, it's always handy to actually start exploring R before they can actually lay their hands on RStudio. The very reason is for someone who's actually beginning their journey, RStudio can be a little too overwhelming, right? Because of the information that it exposes you to, right? So it's always good to actually get your hands dirtied on the base version of R and then start exploring RStudio, right? Okay, so on that thought, let me give you an overview of our console in general. Right, so this is essentially the script, or this is essentially the pane where you do complete scripting, and this is also where you'll be seeing a lot of results of the computations, processing, etc., that you do in your environment. All right, as you can see, there are multiple tabs present over here. Depending on the utility, you can actually go here and choose to save your environment, save your workspace, and then resume whenever you want to come back. By default, there are a set of packages that come in the base R as well, right? And you can, in case you're interested in loading specific packages to perform specific applications or computations, you can actually go ahead and install the package at your own behest, okay? And at any point of time, if you're interested in seeing more content, information, manuals, etc., pertaining to R, you can actually go here and go through the FAQs, see the manuals, download the manuals, look at the R functions, etc., etc., right? So very, very open source community. You can actually, see that there is phenomenal amount of information available out there if you want to get started in learning R, all right? And there is no dearth of information available on the CRAN website as well, the one that we were seeing a while back. And obviously, the major reason for that is that it's an open source community which is contributed by thousands of people across the world. All right. So this is it about the base R. As you can see, it's an extremely basic version which doesn't have lots of frills and fancies. All right. And that's one of the reasons why we actually needed a more advanced version of R, which can be, little more interactive and which can do multiple things, right? Now that's where RStudio comes into the picture. All right. So for downloading RStudio, you can actually go on the website rstudio.com. Depending on your requirement, you can actually go and download the RStudio exe file. All right. And there are commercial licenses to this as well, because for enterprises, they're not really comfortable accessing the free application. They always look to find that someone whose collar they can hold in case something goes wrong, right? So that's exactly the reason why there is an enterprise edition to this as well, right? As most of you would concur, the company wouldn't be very comfortable with releasing production ready solutions on an open source tool, right? So in order to meet the enterprise SLAs, we have an enterprise edition to this as well. And even beyond RStudio, we have some of the other IDEs for R. For instance, Microsoft R Server is another one, right? And one of the areas where R Server is advantageous over RStudio is that Microsoft R Server leverages multi-threading, right? So the open source RStudio or the enterprise RStudio is single-threaded. That's why Microsoft R Server incorporates multi-threaded application where it can run several processes in parallel. All right, so that's where R Server comes into the play. All right, so coming back to RStudio, this is where you can actually download the version that you are interested in. And once you have it up and running, this is how it will look in your console. All right. As you can see, a lot more information depicted over here for your usage, and as you can see, a lot more functionality than the base R. All right. And you can always play around with the tabs that are present over here depending on your usage. All right. So without any further ado, let me introduce you, to the major advantages that RStudio has over the base R. Okay. As you can see, our console doesn't really have a separate, I should say the script window doesn't really have a separate environment over here, and it doesn't really have a history tab as well, right? As you can see over here, RStudio has a history tab as well, where you can actually see what all commands you've executed in the recent past and then make use of it. Okay. And the environment is where whatever variables I initialize will reflect. All right. As you can see, I've just initialized a variable a with the value 1, and that's what's reflecting over here in the environment. All right. However, if I do the same command over here, there you go, it doesn't really show much, right? So that's a key difference between the two over here. Right. Another very useful thing of RStudio is that it has a separate pane for plotting. It has a separate pane for help as well, right? So in R, at any point of time, if you're not clear with something, or if you feel that you want information about something, you just run that command, basically the name of the package or the function or the library, with just a question mark in front of it. All right. Just when you do that, you'll see all the possible help information related to that in your RStudio. All right. The same thing is absolutely possible over here as well. It's just that, it's actually, not as easy to interact with. All right. As you can see, it's actually thrown me out of R onto the website where all the information is available. All right. That's one of the key differences, right? I don't really want to get out of it and actually look at some website for whatever help I need, right? I should be able to look at the information, the basic information over here, and if needed, I should have an option of moving out of it. All right. That's one of the major advantages that RStudio has over R. All right. Another very important feature over here is that at any point of time, if you feel you're more comfortable with using the console or the command line version, just like you use any other application in Unix, etc., you can actually open up the shell version of R. Right. So as you can see over here, I'm actually opening up the shell version of R. Right. So whatever I am doing or whatever I can do on the RStudio in general, I can do all of it over here. All right. Let me try to run the same command over here. There you go. It's run completely. There you go. Right. So it gives me the option of running command line applications as well. Right. Okay, let's try to initialize another variable over here. There you go. Right, so it's executing properly, right? And at any point of time you want to get out of it and work on the conventional RStudio, just close this button and you'll be back. All right. Now something very phenomenal or something very appealing that I personally really like is there is a lot of option of customizing the look and feel of my RStudio. All right. Let me quickly show you how I can actually customize the appearance of my RStudio in general. Okay, all right, never mind. Right, so let me quickly give you an overview of the different panes that we see over here in RStudio, right? Now, as you can see, the major difference is that R has just one pane that it works on. However, RStudio has 4 different panes. All right. The top left is supposed to be used just for scripting, right? Whatever script you want to build, you can actually do it in the top left pane. Console is also used to execute your commands. The major difference is that you can't really do the scripting in the console. All right. So whatever ad hoc commands you want to run, you can actually do it from here, right? Right. So whatever commands you want to execute, you can actually execute it over here. As you can see over here, I've just executed the command to see what time is it right now. All right, so it's giving me the exact result as per the expectation. The major difference is that I cannot do scripting over here. All right, I can't build a script over here, right? So that's the major difference between the 2 panes. Whatever I execute over here will reflect over here. For instance, let's try to view a data set. So R comes with default data sets that one can work with. All right, so I can actually pull the data into my working environment and start working with it. All right, so that's exactly what I have done over here. And let's try to view the data set in general, right? So this is how the data set is looking. I can always click over here and see the various columns that exist in my data set, along with an introductory set of values for the same. All right, when I do the same over here, here you go, it provides me with the exact information over here itself, right? There is no interactive feature of drag and drop and viewing the data set in the environment in the base R package. All right, now another very good feature with RStudio is I can actually view my data set by keying in the command view. All right, gives me the data in a very interactive fashion. As you can see, I can actually use filter operators if I want to see any specific set of values over here, which is not really an option in general in R. All right, let's try to execute that here as well. See, it gives me a very basic version of the view. All right, with not a lot of customization options, right? So that essentially makes it a little more fun to work in RStudio, right? I can actually play around and do a lot of things with this data set over here. Okay, moving on over here, whatever plots I generate, they appear in the bottom right pane over here. All right, so let's try to plot something over here. All right, so to give you an overview, this data set iris is essentially about flowers, right? So it's actually giving, the data set is giving the measurements in centimeters of the various variables such as sepal length, width, petal length, and petal width, all right, for respectively around 50 flowers, right? It also gives me an overview of the different variables that are here. All right, so let's go ahead and compare the length and the width. All right, the idea is to see whether there is some sort of a relation between the length and the width. All right, whether there is any correlation between the two or not. Okay, all right, so this is how it looks over here. I can actually zoom in to see whether there is any correlation between the two or not. All right, so looks good to me. All right, let's try to do this, the same thing over here as well. Right, another beautiful thing that you will notice over here is if I try to type something over here, as you can see, R prompts me with the completions or the complete information that I would need to complete this. All right, as you can see, it's prompting me, and when I press $ over here to refer to a specific column, it's also prompting me the different columns that exist in this data set. All right, very user interactive, very interesting. However, if I try to do something similar over here, well, R disappoints me. All right, it's actually not giving any useful information over here. It might not be very useful in this scenario in particular, However, it's extremely useful in cases where you're actually working with data sets that have thousands of rows or thousands of columns. Okay, so in those scenarios, it's very important to have such a feature. All right, and not just this, in case I'm interested in working on a function, right? For instance, plot, right? It gives me complete information about what all attributes should go in, what this function is all about, a brief introduction on it, along with some sort of syntax around it. All right, I can actually drag through, I can actually drop through the whole list of functions that are matching my search criteria. And the beauty is that I didn't really press anything. It's just giving me on my own, okay, on its own. And if I do the same thing over here, well, nothing really. All right, so that's another one of the major differences that exist between the two. Yeah, right. So these are the major contributors, or these are essentially the factors why RStudio has gained so much popularity over here. And let's try to plot the data set over here as well. For the convenience sake, I'll conveniently go ahead and copy the text from there. There you go, right? So I have very interactive, very useful information around the plot as well, right? As you can see over here, doesn't give me a lot of options of playing around with this information. Okay, very contrary to what we are seeing over here. Every plot that I get, I have an option of saving it as image, saving it as a PDF, copying on the clipboard, etc., etc. All right, I can even publish it using R Markdown, right? But that's a conversation for another day, right? So bunch of things that we can do in RStudio, which is not really practical or possible over here in the base R, right? And you can actually have multiple ways of doing the same thing. For instance, over here there is a button to run just the current line or the selection, and then you can actually rerun the previous code region completely all together, right? So a lot of things to play around with over here. I can use these buttons to actually maximize, minimize these tabs depending on my usage, my convenience. Bunch of things that can be done over here. All right, so I would suggest that someone who's actually starting their career in the statistical programming and advanced analytics should actually get more comfortable with how the base R works, because let me tell you this much: the syntax, the original syntax, is absolutely the same. It's just that RStudio makes it way more fun and way more exciting to work on. All right, makes life very exciting as a data scientist or as an analytics expert. All right, so get your hands dirty on the base R, and then you can actually go ahead and install RStudio and start exploring the different windows, different options that are present over here, and you will see the the exact power of RStudio. All right, okay, brilliant. So on that note, I would call it a day, and I would like to close the session. All right. Thank you very much, and please do reach out to Edureka support team in case you have any more questions.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!